Hey guys, so we're going to continue our book of the Taylor Turbochaser. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 44, Please No. Well, I think the game's up, everybody, said Amy, watching as the adults approached from both sides. I guess you lot may as well get out and hand yourselves in. I'll stay in my chair in the car. Sorry, Amy, said Jack loudly. Sorry, everyone. I held us up for ages with that stupid plan at the restaurant. It's all my fault. Yes, said Amy, it is. Oh, said Jack, deflated. I was hoping you might tell me it wasn't, or that it didn't matter now, and I hadn't after all spoiled everything. Nope, said Amy. Said Jack, fair enough. He started to lift up the handles on his side of the Turbochaser to get out. Janet started to do so on the other side, but then suddenly Rahul said, Hold on! What? Said Amy. There's a gap in the hedge to your right. Okay, just wide enough to get through. Yes, said Amy. I'm still waiting for you to notice that there's not a field there, like there was last time. Not even a field with cows and a bull. There's a lake. A really, really big lake. I know. Amy stared at him. Jack and Janet held their places. Are you saying? I'm not saying anything, except I've got an idea. Oh no, said Janet. Please, no. Chapter 45. Sorry, Mum. The police remained on one side of the Turbochaser and the parents on the other. DCI Bryant took out a handheld megaphone. I think it might be best, said Susie, if I speak to my daughter. DCI Bryant frowned and held up his palm to her. Please stand back, Mrs. Taylor. We have a police policy in these circumstances. Yes, said PC Middleton. I think we know how to handle this. Thank you very much. We are the police after all. Susie looked at Prisha, who shrugged. DCI Bryant brought the megaphone to his lips. Step out of the car. Step out of the car. Turn off the engine and step out of the car with your hands up. With your hands up, said Prisha. What are you talking about? They might have guns, said PC Middleton. Of course they haven't got guns, said Susie. DCI Bryant thought about it for a second. Then he put the megaphone to his mouth. OK, just step out of the car. You can put your hands wherever. Nothing happened. The adults looked at each other. Are you sure I shouldn't do the speaking, said Susie again. I mean, I don't know if we need a megaphone. I can just go and tap on the window and... Oh, for heaven's sake, said Prisha, coming forward and banging on the glass. Rahul, just get out of there. Yes, and Janet, come on, shouted Colin. Yes, come on, Janet, shouted Norma. Everybody, said Susie. I don't think screaming at them is a great idea. Susie was right about that, because inside the car, Amy looked out at the contorted faces of the shouting parents and thought came into her head, trust your instincts, they'll never betray you. One of her mum's quotes again, but it helped her make a decision. Sorry, Mum, she shouted from inside the car, but in a way, it's your fault. She turned the wheel to the right and threw the direction lever forward. Chapter 46. Does it still work if it gets wet? The Taylor Turbochaser moved off towards the right, towards the gap in the hedge and the very large lake beyond. What? Wait! What is she doing? Said Susie. The how, the what, the why is going on now, said Colin. Stop, said Prisha. Yes, stop what you're doing, said DCI Bryant through the megaphone. Turn off your car. There's a lake over there. You can't go that way. To try to drown him out, Amy turned on the sat-nav, which unfortunately said, There's a lake over there. You can't go that way. She turned it off. The car continued on its way through the hedge. Turn the engine off and step away from the car, said DCI Bryant. That's not helping. Shut up, said Prisha. Please, Amy, screamed Susie. Don't drive into the water. Inside the car, Jack was feeling much the same way as his mum. Hello? Water? Immediately in front of us? Deep water? I know this car is partly made out of fish tanks, but last time I looked, none of us are actually fish. I trust Rahul, shouted Amy. He hasn't let us down yet. No, but I'm worried he's going to let us down now, far down into the deep. I can't swim, said Janet. Really? Said Rahul. What about your wings? What? They're not water ones. No, they're fairy ones. You can swim, Janet, said Amy. I've seen you in the local pool. OK, but I thought I'd shout it anyway just to try and stop you. The adults were all running behind through the gap in the hedge, shouting and screaming at Amy to stop. The wheels of the Turbochaser were now on the small bank of grass at the edge of the lake. Are you sure about this? Whispered Amy. No, said Rahul. Great, said Amy, and she carried on driving forward. With a huge splash, the Taylor Turbochaser entered the water. At this point, it was quite shallow, but Amy figured it would get deep pretty quickly. The lake was huge and surrounded by hills that turned into mountains in the distance. Rahul pressed the button to raise up the chassis and make it into a 4x4. This at least took the body car out of the water. Keep going, said Rahul, climbing out of his cat flap. What do you mean, keep going? You're leaving? I'm not, he climbed onto the front of the Turbochaser. I'm staying with you, Amy, all the way to Scotland. No, don't keep going. Let's give up, said Janet. My mum's waving some biscuits. She was. Norma had waded knee-deep into the water and was waving a packet of chocolate digestives at the back of the car, as if she was using the packet like a flag, like those people in airports do who direct aeroplanes. Unfortunately, every time the packet waved towards Colin, he took one. Ooh, said Jack. I'm tempted too. Turn back before her dad eats them all. We're not turning back for a biscuit, shouted Amy, glancing in the rearview mirror. The two policemen were wading into the lake, followed by the parents. Susie, who was not a tall woman, was already up to her chest. DCI Bryant still had the megaphone. Come back, you will drown. I'm worried about that megaphone, sir, said PC Middleton. Does it still work if it gets wet? Of course it does. DCI Bryant moved the device away from his mouth and turned it upside down. It made a dying, buzzing sound. Oh. Amy looked at Rahul, balanced on the bonnet in front of her. How much further can this go? She shouted. Water was starting to lap at the sides of the car windows. Just need a bit more, shouted Rahul. She moved further forward, but the car made the loudest groaning noise it had made so far. It sounded like a large, wild creature in pain. Outside on the glass, the water rose again. Ah! Screamed Janet. Water! It's coming in through the cat flaps. Yeah, it is, shouted Jack. Rahul, said Amy. We can't go on. Now, said Rahul, and he dived down into the water. So that's the end of these chapters. For an activity, I'd like you to think about what might be living in that lake and see if you can draw a picture of all the lovely creatures that might be living in there. Until next time, bye.